what do you think the symbolic significance of global warming, climate change might be? Well, I've been wanting to make a video about that. I was thinking of making a video about that. I think that the global warming, climate change thing, what it is, it's a form of secular apocalypticism. It really is the same structure as when I was young evangelical and people were telling me that the world is going to end and this is the sign, and there's doomsday in front of us, and it is a form of millennialism. It's a form of the end is nigh. It's the same thing. It's just clothed differently, but it's the same as the nuclear holocaust when we were kids, and we thought that the world could end with a nuclear holocaust. It's all the same thing. And I think that it's interesting to study the global warming, climate change thing. I think that using this, whether or not it's actually going to happen, I mean, whether or not it's just a political narrative, or whether or not it's a mix of political narrative and science. I really actually do like, one time someone asked Jordan about this, and I thought his answer was pretty wise. He said, I can't differentiate the science from the politics when I hear people talk about climate change. And so because of that, it's difficult to know when people are actually being objective in terms of science, or whether they're in a narrative. And I think it's really great because it's showing us, I did this last video about how flat Earth is showing us how the world of kind of rational thinking is, let's say, of this rational bubble that we created in the Enlightenment, how it's breaking apart, and symbolic thinking is coming back. And so it's coming back in all kinds of weird ways. At first, it's not necessarily coherent, but this idea that we can no longer differentiate the narrative from the quote unquote science is partly us understanding that, that meaning is inevitable. And you can see it as it's frustrating because we see it in, because it's happening as the world is kind of falling apart. We see it in news. We watch news now. You can't ask yourself, what's your narrative? We can no longer just wonder whether or not they're just telling you the facts, because it just seems impossible to do that anymore. And so in terms of global warming, I think that it can be a useful tool to explain to someone what it means for God to judge the world, because the way that people understand, let's say, when they read the story of Noah, and they think, how could God be so horrible? How could God destroy the whole world and cause a flood? And it's really fascinating, because if you study the traditions of Enoch, you see that as the world becomes more and more technological, as they learn about magic and about smithing and everything technological, and as they do that, they become more warring. They have more fights between each other, and they also become decadent. They create mixture. They also become sexually decadent. And so it's like all that is happening, and then the flood. And so you think, oh, how horrible is it that God would punish the world that way? But the same person that would think that can also think that if we continue to at the pace that we're going, if we continue, capitalism continues the way it does, if we continue to pollute the earth like this, the world is going to destroy us. And they sometimes it really does have like a mythological narrative where it's like Mother Earth is going to spit us out, and the world is going to reject us. We're as if we're parasites on the earth. And so it's actually an interesting way to show people what the judgment of God is, because God's judgment is also the causality of our own actions. It's like the judgment of God is related to it's the meaning. How you could say it this way: the judgment of God is often the meaning of the consequences of our actions. Right. And so it's like someone starts to cheat on his wife, and then, his wife his wife finds out, and his wife leaves him, and then he starts to drink, then he becomes an alcoholic, and then he, he loses his job, and he becomes a total loser, and then he gets on heroin, and then he starts to, and then you'd say like, oh, that man has been judged by God. He's under the judgment of God. But the judgment of God is the meaning of the consequences of his own actions. And so, I mean, not that sometimes there can be like a lightning bolt that comes down. I believe that is totally possible. But but in general, usually there's a relationship between the actions that you pose and the judgment you receive. That's why if you look at medieval representations of hell, for example, the punishment that the person receives in hell is always related to the sin that they committed. And so, for example, someone who was a glutton, you'll see them in hell being stuffed by demons, like being stuffed with food by demons until their stomach explodes, and so the same thing, like with let's say someone who had a kind of sexual perversion, then you'll see them being abused by demons in hell. And so it's always, the idea is that your actions bring about their own consequences, and those consequences are also are also God's judgment upon you. So